Should you take a gap year in order to play college soccer at the Division I level? I'm Zev Talib, otherwise known as the College Soccer Guy, and I'm here to help you play college soccer. So when it comes to taking a gap year, you have to consider the following points. Obviously, a social piece of it, are you being recruited, and your grades. So typically speaking, if you take a gap year, it's because of an injury, maybe like an ACL. Maybe your grades aren't great and you want to go do part-time school, or if you're going to do full-time school, then that's not a gap year that can count against you, which we'll talk about in a minute. Or maybe you want to be recruited. So therefore you're like, these schools, I started late, or maybe you want to go to a top academic D1 school or top academic D3 school, and you're like, shoot, I didn't do this process kind of correctly the first round. I should take a gap year so that way I have a better chance of being recruited by these schools. So we have a student right now who was, I should say, considering taking a gap year, and they ended up choosing to do so with my guidance. Now, understanding when you should take this gap year and when you shouldn't is complicated, and I cannot give you the direct answer here over YouTube, unfortunately, and say, this is what you should do, and this is why you should do it. However, the good news is that by thinking about this, you may give yourself an opportunity. For this particular student, they changed from going on their regular course to deciding to take a gap year and are going to go to a prep high school in the Northeast, which for their case is because the college coaches informed this player that if you do that, we will almost make you an offer. We're not going to guarantee it, but that we're very interested in you. But in this case, we're not really sure if we should. So one of the biggest ways to make the decision is, frankly, from feedback from the coaches. If you draft an email and say, if I were to do this, or maybe the coaches tell you, like in this particular player's case, and you're going to see their case study in a minute, they told him, look, we really like you. This year it's not going to work, but if you were to consider a gap year, that would do us a lot of good. Now, here's my caution to the wind with gap years. First of all, if you take a gap year, every email you send out has to change. Basically, if you take a gap year, you're like a bastard child. Doesn't sound very nice, but that is the truth. They're like, what's wrong with you? Why did this happen? I know there are no longer bastard children, and we don't see them in a negative light, but you get my idea from a movie perspective if we're relating bastard children to what you've seen in the movies. This is the same as a gap year. It becomes a problem. The coach is like, why did you do this? What's wrong with you? So you have to address that in every single email, and you have to do it very mindfully. The next thing is, wherever you decide or whatever you decide to do in your gap year is really telling. For example, we have another student that tore their ACL, so they're thinking about taking a gap year, but they're too old to play club soccer anymore, which means they're going to be forced to play what's called the UPSL or NPSL or maybe USL2, and there's a lot of limitation when it comes to being recruited. Now, that particular player did so much work with us up front prior to his ACL, just because we started early, that he's actually still going to play college soccer at the same year and is probably not going to take a gap year. He may want to take a gap year if he wants to go play at Duke, because they haven't been able to see him play for 9 months, but other top academic D3 schools like a Carnegie Mellon and a Williams and Connecticut College have already said to him, hey, we want you on the team. So he's got to go measure that. The point is to say it's a big decision, and I want to take you through what we did with this student so you can decide if a gap year is right for you.
This past weekend, I went to the Dartmouth camp.
Yep.
And I personally think I played well. I think it went well. I think the coaches like me. I think like it helped kind of in my standing, but the thing is that when I talked to them, well, okay, so first I asked like what level do you see me playing at? And they also said Division One in terms of high academic D1 or like Dartmouth in particular, like they advised that I would take a gap year or PG year. But they said that like if they were a school like Lafayette or like one of I don't know what league is that? I forgot what it's called, but if they're one of those schools, um they like want me on their roster right now. Which I think that's I take that as a compliment.
Huge compliment. Are
Um
you joking? Huge compliment. Also, Lafayette's better than Dartmouth sometimes. Anyways, keep going.
but they said like their window's closing, they only have so many spots left and it's like already late in the process. So they said they advised that I would take a gap year or a PG or like just have an extra year. They didn't really say which of the three, and that's kind of something that I want to discuss today is because I think we are considering taking an extra year and it's like between reclassing gap year, PG year. So whichever of those would kind of fit my situation best.
I'll just add, because I went to the parent meeting at Dartmouth and the coach said that they have 3 spots left for 2025, and that they'll be done by August.
Definitely.
Um, but in this regard, like he talked to the Northwestern coach. The Northwestern coach said that he liked you, but and needs to see you more, and then also asked, is he willing to take a gap year?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. Okay, so that's maybe like 2 weeks before the Dartmouth camp. We just got a new head coach for the U19s. I don't really know like what his network is, but he seems to have like a large network of college coaches that he's friends with. So he spoke to then in terms of recruiting, they just said they need to see me more. They've only seen me once and the window's closing, and especially if they need to see me like th 3 to 5 times, as you said, like I don't really have that much time to do that. And especially since Hartford's not doing any showcases, and Dartmouth said they might be able to come out to a game this coming weekend. It's still kind of, I feel like, late and kind of tight in the process. For those two, which are like two of my top schools, already seen me twice, but I don't really think the first one counted because I was like a freshman or a sophomore, and I didn't talk to the coaches and I didn't email them before, and we hadn't spoke or Columbia where they've seen me one or two times. Like it might be a different conversation. But like Dartmouth and Northwestern are two of my top schools, so I think the reason why I'm like we are kind of pushing the idea of taking an extra year just because that's what they both advised.
And I would say that like there was a prep school at the Dartmouth camp that tried to recruit for this fall, and then there's another prep school near New Haven that's trying to recruit him for this fall. So that's just like well, we'll have the conversation. I just don't. We wanted to talk to you to get some kind of context about like prep school, like reclassing or PG or gap year, all those kinds of options.
Coaches are telling the truth. And look, I'm an opinion. It's hard to sometimes know if the coach is telling you we're almost full and would you take a gap year because they're actually interested, or they're just too scared to say, hey, we are not interested. Like that's a balance we have to consider. They see you as cattle. He takes a gap year, don't care about how that affects his whole academic life. They're like, great, one more number to consider. Oh, we didn't like him. And then you just wasted a whole year hoping that the one girl would marry you. Like that's insane. So in saying that, time frame is true. Like whether or not they have 3 spots, look, I'm sure he's not lying to you. Like I'm sure there's truth to that. But he also might be saying it to make his life easier, going, I'm only picking 3 and you're all at the camp. Now, if that's the case, like how messed up of them? Why would they bring this many kids? They got 3 spots. Like they should be better about it, but there's money and da da blah blah blah. So my point is, if they see a 4th kid, would they bring him in? There's no real rules. It's just their guidelines. So that's another piece of it. The other thing is that August is very real though. August, September, October, like they will be done. That is for Ivy League schools, top academic. That is very true. So that then brings us to the biggest question, which is when we think about all these situations, you go, these are my top choices. And if it's a dream and it's a dream, I'll support you throughout the way. And you go, we're going to consider taking the PG or the gap year and it's going to be for my school. But you would have to go into it knowing there's a very good chance you could do all that and they could basically tell you the same thing. We're actually, if you are willing to take gap year, we'll commit you right now as a 2026. And that's not what they said. So from my perspective, I don't love the gap year from a human. PG and the gap year thing, there's a couple dilemmas to that. Socially, obviously, like friends, like all your kids are going to be graduating high school and like you're not. You're going to go to college as a 19-year-old, which is very different than going as it really comes down though to some degree of how badly do you want to go to those schools and play soccer there. Now let's pretend you got in so academically to those schools. You would probably be able to walk into both of them in the spring. Be hard to walk in the fall, but the spring, and you might say, I'm going to my dream school. I'm happy. I'll try in the spring. If it doesn't work out, I'm at my dream school. And that scenario, nothing we need to do different other than, keep your grades up, get a recommendation, all the regular stuff you're going to do anyways for academics. I'm confirming I'm not going to go to college. Let's say, God forbid, you got injured or something. And you're like, I'm taking a gap year. Well, that's very different. Then you would tell every team, I'm taking a gap year. Do not consider me, da da da. But let's pretend you're like, I'm undecided, which at this stage, we could put you in that category. What are you going to not start the recruiting process for another year? You'll be in the exact same problem you're in now. You have to do the same thing we're doing right now to try and get recruited if you even were to take a gap year. So the recruiting process doesn't change at all. And if they say to you, kind of like they've done now, hey, we want you. Would you be willing to take a gap year? And we are going to sign you. That's a totally different conversation. College coaches don't lie about the level. They're very happy to tell you, look, they won't always tell you like bluntly, which is annoying, but they'll be like, hey, you're not a D1 player. Like I had, just so you know, I had like 3 other students go to that camp. None of them are your position and none of them are playing D1. They're all D3 players. So I told them, ask Dartmouth what level you should aim for. And Dartmouth told them you're Division 3 soccer players. So the fact that they told you you're Division 1, they're not lying to you. Does that make sense? So now that creates a dilemma because you're like, my expectation is Division 1. I want Division 1. Where my other kids, in a bizarre way, it's easier for them. They're like, I knew I was D3. I've been confirmed I'm D3. I'm going to aim for D3. You are in a mix, right? You could definitely play at a D3 school and maybe start every game, or go to a D1 school that's a lower tier but not as good academics, like you mentioned, Lafayette. So from that perspective, you don't have to decide this today. In addition, though, is when you're doing the process right now, and we have to think about the other schools you're pursuing and are pursuing you. You're a very good soccer player. So part of me goes, if you go, my dream schools are these, to the extent that I'm willing to blow everything up out of the water. Look, you're very passionate about those dreams. I would be here to support you and say, let's go for it. But you'd have to know the risk, which would be not getting to play college soccer at all, potentially. It doesn't work that way. That you don't know what could happen to you. So, but the problem with gap year, and this is my big concern, right now, you're playing USL Academy, correct?
Yeah.
And we've had this problem this whole process. I'm a really good soccer player that plays on a really good team that is not seen by college coaches. It's 10 times worse when you're on gap year. 10 times worse. You can't play soccer with a team that goes to anything unless the age gap it works, which for you, I should ask that question. If you were to take a gap year, which would not be this, right? So you'd still go to school your senior year. We're talking about the year after that, taking a gap year. So you're not going to school for like 2 years. Does that make sense? That's no college for 2 years. That's a long time. My question to you is, USL wise, could you play as a 19-year-old?
Yeah, as U20.
Okay, so, but you'll run into the same issue you're having right now. You'll just be a year older, which is lack of exposure. And MLS Next does not work. That will not. So let's say you tried to change teams. You will have no team. There will be no team for you to go to showcase it. The coaches will say, come to our ID camp. Great. It was great to see you again after a year. So here's the other thing I want to add. While it feels Northwestern and Dartmouth are dead, like that's the vibe. Dartmouth, they were good and honest with us, which to me is at least something. We have to move on from Dartmouth. The next piece to that is, do you say, I want to keep doing this, and I want to keep trying to pursue? And what do I look for now? What other school should I consider? And that's where we can talk to your parents, as he had mentioned Dartmouth himself. The fact that he said those words is an extension where I might even have us write him an email and say, hey, I thought about what you said. I'm considering the gap year, but like, I'm interested in a school like Lafayette. Would you be a reference for me? And he may respond to that, he may not, but like, he's the one that said it. It didn't come out of our head. So the question I think at this point really is this. Number one, are you at a point where you're like, it's these schools or no schools? You're like, I want to play at these or I don't. Or you like, look, I'm open to academic D3 and I'm even open to maybe a Division 1 that's not as academic.
Like, is there a way of like getting a straight answer about this year and maybe the gap year intention? You know what I mean, from them in the follow-up email?
Definitely. We will definitely draft it to do our best. As you know, they can be finicky about responding, etc. But we definitely should do our best.
From my point of view, I wasn't sure if they like said no to him or whether they were like, this is the first time we've seen you. We need to see you, like, evaluate you a couple more times.
That's what it sounds like, to be honest. But he did say, like, if we were Lafayette, we would have like basically said yes, which is a pretty big deal because after one time. Now it's easy for them to say that. It doesn't really mean anything, right? Because nothing comes of that. So it's easy throwaway words. But it's still words that they did mean it. So the answer is yes. And we've had this problem from the get-go, which is why we've expressed to you guys, hey, we have to consider these D3 programs because their camps are more likely to make us an offer. And then a coach call is better than the D1s because they're all going to say the same thing.
You said that I'm gonna have to make a decision soon about like kind of what the schools that I'm all for nothing for, or if I am. I mean, if I do take a gap year, I'm obviously deciding that, or a PG year, then I'm obviously deciding that like I want these schools and not the rest. But I think the camp helped me a lot with Williams, because Williams was there, and I think he was like the Williams coach was like the coach of the team yesterday, and then they sent me a text as well asking if I got their email, and they want me to go to a camp this summer. But I don't know, like if we make a decision now, like are we gonna pursue that, or like I know you said before, like getting an offer from a D3 can help a D1, just kind of how like that works.
So Williams is a great academic school, as you know. It's a very good soccer team, and I don't want you to go for the sake of like, let's leverage the offer, which we could do if it leads to an offer, because Williams is a type of school you can leverage. But like, I don't want anybody to go to a camp to a school they don't want to go to. It's too much money and time and effort. That's the type of place you go to the camp and you don't need to do anything else. One camp, two camp offer. And if they want more than that, it can be from video or your coach, or if they want to see you again, then we'll have to deal with it. But you're talking about close to the end. That is what that means. So your style of play, USL exposure, you're a D1 kid that a D3 school wants. And also the D3 schools, like they beat low tier D1 schools. They would beat low tier D1. Like Williams would have beat my Division 1 school. But you have to say, do I want to play every minute? Do I want to have a coach who loves me? Clearly, if Williams texted you and emailed you, they like you. So now he's going, look, I'm telling you I have a crush on you. Are you going to have a crush on me back? And if you're not, then I'm going to move on. The main thing we want to know for sure is number one is exposure, right? So you could just ask the question like, when and how do college coaches when and how do college coaches see me? Two, how do you rank the exposure to USL Academy? Which we kind of know the answer to that. So the better question, if he'll answer, is how do you rank it versus MLS? Now we can go on their website and find out like their success rate type of thing. So it's a fair question. The next thing is like, if I were to play for your team, is there time to get recruited this year? Who do you play against? Like, is it MLS team sometimes, or is it only other prep schools? Do you recommend ID camps, or is your reference enough? He should say you should still have to go to ID camps. If he says his reference is enough, that's a red flag. Then, but those are the questions I'd want you to ask.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dartmouth. Williams.
That we should follow up with everyone who's at the camp, like all the other schools, but those could be a
There,
little more generic.
there was
It's like
also
Bowdoin, Tufts.
in Tufts. Yeah.
Definitely should follow up with all those. Definitely. Because as you saw, like they weren't allowed to talk to you. So, I appreciate your honest feedback regarding the level I can play, and I'll fix my typos in a second. And the level I can play, and level I can play, and about gap slash PE here. Okay, so here's a couple questions. If I were to take a gap year, would you recommend I go to a prep, go to one of the prep schools that was in a camp? Let me just write this out, because that's one question I want to ask. I'm going to say, you had said that if for other D1 schools, I would be a great candidate to use you. Okay, I'll come. Let me get things moving.
And is there a way to like find out if there's a chance for him this year?
Yes. Well, it sounds like there isn't. Is there another part of the conversation that I missed?
I mean, I don't think they said no, but I think they said it was, like they hadn't seen him enough, basically, and the window was closing.
Okay. So here's the thing. You can only ask so many questions and get so many responses. So the immediate thing we know is yes, this year is possible if they could see him more. How could they see him more? Right now, it's only you would go to camp again. That's the only.
Well, or they may come to it. They said they might come to a game this weekend, but it was Memorial Day weekend, so they weren't
Okay.
sure,
Yeah,
so
that's pretty helpful. So let's do this. Dear coach, I really enjoyed camp. Thanks so much for the opportunity. I appreciate your honest feedback regarding the level and in regards to gap year. I know you mentioned you may be able to come. That's a huge compliment that they would even think about it. Is a big compliment. You may be able to come to a game this weekend. I have put the details below. It still leads us to the same thing, which is, look, if they come to the game, that means they really wanted to see us. If they don't come to the game, it doesn't mean they didn't want to see us. It means they got busy, and it still brings us back to the same location, which is, like, let's say we ask the question, where do you see me? They'll be like, we need to see more of you. Now we could ask, I know you mentioned it,
I mean, the reason I say that is that at the parents' meeting, a parent asked, like, is it okay if I ask you, like, am I number 8 on the list or
Right.
something? And the coach said, yes, you should definitely ask that.
Okay. That's why I'd like that. So, okay, what do you guys think of these 3 questions and how I phrase them? Where am I on your recruiting list? Say between 1 to 100. I want it like the way she phrased it is the way I want to say it. I like that. So I could say like, am I in your top 25 recruiting list? But I don't want to make an assumption because then he might just go yes, and that's not really helpful, you know? So
Right.
that's why I liked it slightly more open-ended. Where am I on your recruiting list between 1 and 100? It's pretty direct. I like that. Then if I were to take a gap year, would you recommend I go to one of the prep schools that was in attendance at camp? We should definitely get their opinion. You had said for other D1 schools, that'd be a great candidate. May I use as a reference. Those are 3 questions. And I think it's fair to ask them. And we did it clear, concise, and easily. That's what I think for Dartmouth. We can fix
Okay.
that.
Good.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No. That's good. That's good.
Okay. For Williams, you guys have to decide what camp you want to go to. So, dear coach, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your messages. I have spoken with my family. We will be at the camp from to. Would it be possible for me to come a day early and on campus? Okay, this is you guys don't have to do this.
June
But
30th to 31st.
thank you. Okay. Um, is this a little aggressive, but sometimes you can force a visit, an unofficial visit. Force is a strong word, but like if you guys say like I really like Williams, is the top 5 for me, top 5 choice. By saying would it be possible for me to come a day early and briefly meet you while I tour campus, you're saying to the coach, wow, you really like our school. You're willing to come a day early just to look at the campus, which you should do before you commit if you're serious. And we'd love to meet with them. Now, the other language we might say is, hey, could I come a day early and meet you? That's pretty aggressive because he may go like, you're going to fly a day early and maybe I'm not available. This makes it very easy for him to say, well, if you're going to be here anyways, then of course come say hi. And then of course, if he says that, then we will book it and go a day early. So I'm not saying
Hmm.
you should just do this. Let's see what he says. He may say like, I'm so sorry, I won't be around. In which case, don't go a day early and tour campus
Right.
after camp.
Right.
But if he says actually we'll be there early, and you know what, we have another couple people visiting, and the assistant coach would love to meet with you, that would be great. Because before anybody offers you, you're gonna have to meet with the coach on campus at some degree. So we can force that step kind of thing.
So, so what? So, I mean, like in your honest opinion, in terms of the D1 schools, like, is Milo like behind in the process, or is he? You know what I mean? Like, I just
For
how?
the top academic schools, yes. Behind is a strong word. We've been working aggressively night and day, aggressive video. Da, da, da. We have sent so much video and da, da. We face the same problem we've always faced, which is how do we get seen? And we've had to wait till the summer, right? May is the first camp of the summer, basically, or Dartmouth is, and we went. We did our job. This is the summer. So, like for the top academics, they've already told you how they feel like Penn and Columbia, they're all in the same boat. So we either have to say those are going to be slightly out of reach, but we want to go to camp anyways because our dream, but we'll get very similar feedback to Dartmouth. Or we go, I don't want to spend my time there because I know kind of what that's going to lead to. Let me focus on a Division 3 schools that I like and where I will have better results.
I mean, I guess like there are other schools like Dartmouth. I think this was the first time they saw him in person, right? So that feels like the beginning of a process, and I understand like, okay, that's behind, right? Because, but like with other schools, like it seems like with Columbia, they sent someone to watch his game in New York. He hasn't been to their ID camp yet, but I think we'll go this summer. You
Yes,
know,
that's
and
a better
he sent
example.
them an every touch video, and they said like great stuff. You know, like so it seems like with
Maybe
certain
to answer your
schools he may
question,
be further along, but I still don't know like, because they haven't asked him for grades or anything, like if that if that means that they're not interested, you know what I mean?
I do. So they're interested because they don't respond if they're not interested. We have lots of kids email Columbia and don't get responses. So they're interested. If you're asking where you're on the process, yes, they've made out offers. So behind seems like a strong word, but we should definitely get at this point in the process, and I can help you. But basically, the following email as you guys have already done. But basically, for this point on number 1, I'll call number 2, is for all the schools on I'll say our list, because I know we have a list, but it's shifted over time, is we should write an email along the lines of, dear coach, I am working on coming to your camp on may, may I ask where I stand in your recruiting process? and if the next step would, and if you recommend coming to camp as the next step, I won't be at any showcases this summer as of now, which is that's the problem we're facing. So we have to tell them. Otherwise, they'd be like, well, you don't have to come. Just finish your schedule. But that's not an option for them.
But because Milo, didn't you write something like that to Princeton?
I mean, all right, I haven't like been in like that much contact with Princeton. I mean, I've been in contact, but most of it's been like kind of I don't know the word, but like without like anything forward because the only time they saw me was at like the assistant coach at Masters.
Got it.
But I thought they emailed you something about like the state of their recruiting class.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. They said we are currently looking for 2 more 2025s for our top group of recruits and open to all field player positions. And that was in an email where they wanted me to come to a camp in the summer.
But what was the email that they were responding to?
Oh, actually, no, you're completely right. It was like a very similar email. My team isn't attending any showcases as part of USL Academy. I know you mentioned looking forward to seeing me at a future event. I don't have any showcases coming up, so what would you recommend me to do in order to move further along the recruiting process with you and your program? I'm happy to attend an ID camp if you felt that would be a good next step.
What did he say?
He said, Milo, we have a pair of camps this summer that would be an opportunity for us to see you play.
So
We compare the top players at camp to the top players we have seen in other ways. Some years we have found multiple players from camp, and in other years we have not recruited any. We are currently looking for 2 more 2025s for our top group of recruits
okay,
and
this
open
email I remember. Here's the deal. Let's say you say to a school, should I come to your camp? And they say, no, you don't need to. Then you're not going to get seen by them. That's it. Then it's dead. Now, if let's say the coach says, hey, like we'd rather see you to showcase than a camp, it's not worth your time. Well, then of course that's really helpful information. But even still, all that happens is you don't get seen. Where if instead you go, yes, I know the coach told me like I shouldn't go to camp, but like this is the only thing I can do to impress him, then you still have to go. The answer is the same. You got to go to camp. So even if we ask the question, so here's what we're really doing. We're not trying to figure out, should we go to camp? We're trying to figure out which camp to go to. How do they respond to us? Like, that's as great an answer you're going to get. He was honest. He was lengthy. He's saying, look, you want to get recruited by me and you're not going to showcases, come try out for my team. That's how it works. So that's you on a scale of 1 to 10, we put that at 6. Maybe another school like Columbia will be like, look, we've been waiting for you. We don't even care about showcases. Please come to camp. We'll make you an offer. It's not usually that language, but the point is that's a 10. So then we pick that one over Princeton. That's what the next stage of this is. The schools that you are talking to, I never spoke to as a player. Obviously, since doing this, I've had players go to these schools. But there's another gentleman who I've just hired who's helped more kids go to these top level D3 and D1 academic schools than I have, which was why I hired him. And I want you to talk to him and your family. I think you might have spoken to him once before, Nalu. So the point is, I'm just going to give you a schedule. So if you want to book him next week, you can book me the same week or the week after. But I'm going to give you a schedule because I'd like you to talk to him. Just have a convo.
Okay.
Perfect, guys. I'll talk
Thank
to
you.
Yep. If you want more help playing college soccer, give me a call. I know that was a lot of information really densely and it might be overwhelming for you. I want to help you play college soccer. Give me a call, links in the bio, and I'll talk to you soon. Comment, link, subscribe. Give me one of these emojis if you thought it was good, and I'll talk to you soon.